at the 11th hour, the route was changed by the administration of Mayor Earl Cabell. The route was changed to turn right on Houston and then left on Elm, not only going by the ambush nest where the waiting rifles were, but also going by the building in which they had pre-located the Patsy. And the indications are 3 teams at the minimum, with two teams shooting from the grassy knoll, that's 4 men, and at least 1 team in the back, although not on the 6th floor at that window. They could not have been going any faster as they passed the depository, as they passed through the target zone of 11 or 12 miles an hour, which is virtually stationary if you have rifles and professionals waiting for you.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street. Stand by just a moment, please. Put me on, Phil. Put me on. The motorcade is coming by here. The presidential car coming up now. We know it's the presidential car. You can see Mrs. Kennedy's pink suit. There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car. We understand Governor and Mrs. Connolly are in the car with President and Mrs. Kennedy. We can't see who has been hit, if anybody's been hit, but apparently something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong.
At Parkland Hospital, the staff tried every life-saving procedure. Dr. Perry inserted a tube into the trachea through the bullet hole in the throat. Dr. Robert McClelland was the closest doctor to the president's head wound.
The wound was in the back part of the head and just about where I'm indicating here, and was probably involved in an area about that big around, and perhaps larger, but certainly no smaller than that. And a portion of the brain fell out onto the cart. Mrs. Kennedy behaved very admirably, I think. She certainly was in a state of shock, as would be expected. She was carrying a portion of his brain in one of her hands and gave it to one of the physicians. She was obviously much more comfortable staying inside and stayed there, in fact, until a priest arrived to administer the last rites.
He died of a gunshot wound in the brain, of a bullet right through the head.
John Kennedy was obviously shot from the front. Everybody knows it. Virtually everybody in Dealey Plaza rushed to the grassy knoll where they heard the sounds.
They came from a fence between the book depository and the railroad track.
From behind the overpass over there, triple overpass.
Right over about 20 or 30 feet from the other end of that little picket fence.
And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees.
We all four seen about the same thing as the shots. The smoke came from behind the hedge.
And then as the cart got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you, too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall.
When I stated I felt like the second and third shots could not have been fired from the same rifle, they reminded me that I wasn't an expert.
There was, 3 or 4 real close together, and it was, must have been the first one that shot him, because that was the time I took the picture, and during that time, after I took the picture, and the shots were still being fired, I decided I'd better get on the ground. I was, no more than 15 foot from the car, and in line of fire, evidently.
Just as Mary started to take the picture and the president came right even with us, 2 shots, we looked at him and he was looking at a dog in the middle of the seat. 2 shots rang out and he grabbed his chest and a look of pain on his face and fell across toward Jackie. And she fell over on him and said, "My God, he's shot." And there was an interval, and then 3 or 4 more shots rang out. By that time, the motorcade had sped away.
In the vicinity of the 2 men, there was a flash of light, there was something which occurred which caught my eye in this immediate area on the embankment.
Ed Hoffman, a deaf mute, standing by the next overpass, had a clear view behind the picket fence.
A cigarette. He was smoking a cigarette. And then a little bit later, he saw more smoke, and he saw the man turn around, and he had a gun in his hand, or a rifle. Saw him turn. He turned towards the area where he was standing, and he saw him run and throw the gun to a man that was wearing a railroad uniform. And the man took the gun apart and put it in a bag behind the railroad controls, the box there. And then he was frightened. He knew something was going on. And he started waving for a police officer. He saw a security guard or a Secret Service. He wasn't sure what he was, but he was trying to get his attention and tell him what he had saw. And the man turned his gun towards him, and it frightened my father, so he left.
Other witnesses heard shots from the rear. Photographs taken immediately after the killing showed a plainclothesman picking up a bullet. Others showed a ricochet off the sidewalk, fired away from the direction of the book depository. James Tague, standing by the triple underpass in front of the limousine facing the depository, was hit by flying lead or concrete. A bullet hole was found in the dashboard of the presidential limousine. There was a nick in the windshield. Motorcycle officer Billy Hargis, riding to the left rear of the presidential limousine, had been splattered with the president's blood and brain tissue. Another photograph caught Jack Ruby at the scene of the assassination. There were over 20 arrests immediately after the assassination. Only 3 were recorded.
Eugene Hale Brading, the high-level courier for the Mafia, who was arrested at the scene under the name of Jim Braden and interviewed by the FBI, then turned loose.
Attention all squads. Attention all squads. The suspect in the shooting